My wife just bought me one of those Yetis for Christmas, or for my birthday. I like it. It's amazing how long it stays warm. Okay. Got it. So our comments about the pastor at Grace, we'll keep to ourselves. There's fortunate. I'm on the delinquent list all the time. Yeah, it's kind of funny when I actually did serve on our visitation team, and if you looked at the attendance record, I had worse attendance than most of the people we were visiting. So, because I travel, not just because I skip church, but I made that comment to Pastor Sutton. I said, actually, I've been in church less than a lot of these people. So, I don't know. He chuckled a little, gave him a little humor at least. No, semi. So he still preaches for us and at St. Paul's. But he's been working for Grace in Action up in the Twin Cities. They help churches kind of with leadership and things like that. So he's been a short timer for a number of years already. Yeah. 4, I would guess. I think he's going to be done at St. Paul's and then still do a little bit with Grace in Action. That's his plan. Yeah.
Anybody need a folder? Everybody grab a folder on the way in. Oh.
Yeah, you can. Otherwise, you can get one on the way out too. Yeah. It's more of a resource.
You're not referring to it, okay?
Yeah, more of information and resource. I'm not going to refer to it during our Bible class itself. So I have all of the Bible passages. They'll all be on the screen for you. I find as I travel, that's just easier. Then I don't have to worry about how many copies I made and all of those things. So we're gonna talk about church and ministry, and in my effort to do that, I'm going to show some pictures of churches, and it'll be a little bit fun for you because it'll be the Name That Church If You Can contest. This one I doubt anybody can name. This is just north of New Ulm. This is Fairfax. You're in the country when they name the church after the township. I guess if you grew up in Milwaukee, maybe you don't know townships. But this is in Wellington Township. It's up just north of the college, probably about a 45-minute drive. I preached there for a mission festival a number of years ago. It was only 11 below that day, so a mild winter on the prairie of Minnesota. And they had a wonderful meal, and just a neat congregation that goes back many years. This one is another of your brother or sister, however you want to describe it, one of your sister congregations in the Wells. This is one that you helped to train the pastor. You helped to plant the church. And if you're involved with the Church Extension Fund, back when I was a kid, I had a paper route up in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, and I sent my money to Church Extension Fund, got a good return on it. So again, I want to show that collective ministry that we share as members of Wells. Grace, Waukesha, you're one of 1,270 other congregations. And I'm from one of the schools in our worker training system, but we do a lot of things together. Anyone recognize this congregation? Drawing a blank. This is our church in Sharpsburg, Georgia. Pastor Jonathan Schrader. The reason I wanted to put this picture here is this was the weekend before COVID this was 2 Sundays before COVID shut everything down. The next church, this was the one right before COVID. We were on choir tour. You can tell by the plants, there's not a lot of palm trees in that scene, but this is, anybody recognize this one? Yeah, some live oaks, good call. So then if you got live oaks, you're either Texas, you got them across Louisiana, but this is Florida. This is Beverly Hills, Florida. Again, a sister congregation. All right, now this one, somebody might get. 1970s kind of vintage. Anyone recognize that congregation? This is in Livonia, Michigan. St. Paul's in Livonia. And the reason I like to share this one with you is when Detroit started to go west, there was a church out there years, back in like the settlement times in early Michigan. But Wells helped to establish this congregation. And I like to use this one as an example of what we share in our ministry. St. Paul's, Livonia. So St. Paul's, Livonia, there aren't any more German immigrants coming to the U.S. like they did back in the 1800s. And yet there are immigrants from India. And I preached here in December, maybe 4 years ago. You can see a little bit of snow on the roof there for Advent. And what an awesome thing. About a third of the congregation, about a third of the Bible class were a lot of white-collar Indians. So a lot of doctors, dentists, lawyers, who wanted their kids in the Lutheran elementary school there. And now you saw another, and they were first-generation immigrants from India. So you see another touch of the gospel through this worldwide ministry of Wells. Okay, the last one I'm going to show you, and then I want to talk about church and ministry. This one you too helped to recently plant as a member of Wells. It's not northern Wisconsin. It's not Eagle River where I grew up. You can tell by the plants there. Excellent. This is Las Vegas. Pastor Tom Unke is there. And whenever I think of any one of those pastors, even though you may or may not know them, you help train them as members of Wells. Now, in my case this morning, please don't ask for a refund after the sermon. Get your money back. Say, we got ripped off. But you didn't know me from anyone, but there was a young man from Eagle River, Wisconsin, who went to an area Lutheran high school in Merrill, Northland Lutheran, and then went to Northwestern College in Watertown in 1986. Graduated from there in 1990, went on to Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary, 1990 to 94, was assigned to one of the mission starts that we had started in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Then I served at Abiding Word in Maineville, Ohio, again, a church plant of Wells. And now I'm at your College of Ministry. It's an awesome thing to be able to look at church from that perspective. Back up and see yourself as a part of a bigger picture. Sometimes when we're at a local congregation, we get into just the day-to-day routine of ministry, the challenges of ministry, and at times we lose sight of that bigger picture, that fellowship that we have as members of Wells. Now, what I'd like you to do is give some examples of the way that people today use the word church. Because before I talk to you about specific things that Wells does, work or training, I want to talk to you broadly first about church. Give some examples of ways that people today would use the word church. Yeah. We went to church. And all language is contextual, right? So how do I know what he means? We went to church. If it's a Tuesday and it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I run into you at Piggly Wiggly and you say, we just went to church and we're on our way up north, we're going to go up, up to Minocqua or something like that. What definition of church would it be in that scenario? A building, right? I dropped something off. I'm up for the donuts or the flowers this weekend. If I said, we went to church and it's Sunday afternoon, how What might you speculate about the definition of the word church? Worship service. Excellent. And other definitions of the word church that people use in day-to-day life.
Church, you belong to established congregation.
Excellent. Are you churched or unchurched? Now in post-modernity, they use the word de-churched, that you've graduated from church. You're still spiritual, but now you no longer go to church. But it can mean something as simple as that. Like you go to some organized religion, you go to church. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, it's just I'm not into the organized religion. That's it. People will say that too. I'm just not into that church thing. Good description. There are others. Ways that people use the word church. Yeah, way in the back. Yeah, a congregation. So what church do you belong to? This one. Good answer. Grace Lutheran Church, Waukesha, Wisconsin, right? That's my church. Now, when I was in Oklahoma, I was pastor in Tulsa. People would look at the sign and they would see Mount Olive Lutheran Church. And they'd say, Pastor Mike, is that a Christian church? They didn't. There aren't many Lutherans in Oklahoma. So, yep, we're a Christian church. And then they would look up at the sign and they'd say, now what is that? There's that Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod. Now, Pastor Mike, what is that? So, and I would say, well, that's my church body, right, or my national church. Oh, okay. You know, some of them, if they were Southern Baptists, they understand a bigger church, you know, the Southern Baptist Convention. But a lot of them were non-denominational. So it was really hard to explain. Well, what do y'all mean? So your church is united with other churches? Yeah. Well, we don't do that. We're non-denominational. And then I'd ask them, where do you get your pastors from? We're in an association of non-denominational churches. That sounds like a synod. I mean a synod. But anyway, so yeah, you really, as you travel around, people use the word church differently. Another one.
Well, there's a federal definition for IRS purposes of what churches are, and they have a whole bunch of separate rules.
Yeah. So you're a 501c3, you're a nonprofit, but then there's like a subset of a church or religious entity. Yeah, very good. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I'm going to the golf course. It's my church or whatever. I'm going fishing. That's my church. Yeah. The one I didn't hear, I thought surely in Waukesha, Wisconsin. The church key, right? The bottle opener. I remember back in the 80s going to Madison, and there was a bar called the Church Key. They had purchased an old abandoned or a church that somebody was no longer using as a church, and they turned it into a bar. And of course, creatively called it the Church Key. Sometimes it could just be also like, don't get churchy with me, don't get preachy with me, or like sanctimonious. Okay, now let's read these two verses together. And then you see the word highlighted, or the word church highlighted. But read these verses with me, please. And God placed all things under his feet and appointed him to be head over everything for the church, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills everything in every way. What church is that? One we didn't really mention, yeah. The invisible church. Think of the way we confess it in the two creeds. Well, Apostles and Nicene, but think of how we confess it. I believe in the communion of saints. Yeah, communion, not Lord's Supper communion there, but the common union, the communion in that sense, the common union of the saints. Well, I believe in the holy Christian, one holy Christian, well, that'd be we believe if you get to the Nicene. We believe in one holy Christian apostolic church. Again, this, we could say the elect, the saved from all generations, all people, God's eternal people known only to Him, that invisible group, a lot of different descriptors of that church. Speaking of churches, one more trivia church for you. Nobody recognized this one. This is, nobody? Mobile, Alabama. Birmingham, Alabama. Pastor Ben Kratz is there, and he's the Bishop of Birmingham. And if you're the only Wells pastor in the town, we won't burst his bubble. He can call himself bishop. That's fine. We started this church back in the 70s, late 70s, when Wells separated from the Missouri Synod in 1961. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod didn't give us a lot of future. We were pretty much just in Wisconsin. We had a couple churches in Arizona and a few in the Pacific Northwest, but we came up with a slogan, every state by 78. It's like the Alamo. Remember the Alamo? No, something like that. Every state by 78. And Wells set about to try to do that. And so this congregation, this is one of those fortunate opportunities where we bought the right land in Birmingham, Alabama, and they sold it, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, because it's some prime real estate. People really don't go downtown in big cities to worship. I mean, I understand like Grace downtown Milwaukee is different, but in a lot of metro areas, if you want to have a church ministry, you likely need to be out in the suburbs. So this church they built out near Vestivia Hills. There's a Toyota plant out there. There's an Amazon fulfillment center, and there's a lot of subdivisions. Again, another congregation in our fellowship. Now let's talk church versus a church. So the Holy Christian Church, the Communion of Saints, versus a local church. Read this verse to yourself, and then tell me what church or churches you see in this passage, germane to our conversation this morning. You could find at least two different uses of church here. Yes, sir. Yeah, a local congregation at the city of Corinth, right, to the Church of God in Corinth. And then, what other church do you see? Again, I think we would say the invisible church. And we could imagine as the Holy Spirit is breathing these words into the Apostle Paul, he could have also been thinking of other congregations in the Mediterranean, in the Roman Empire, but certainly he would have been thinking of the saints above, the saints on earth, who call on the name of the Lord Jesus, called to be holy. Excellent. Here's just one more example of a local church. And if you open your Bibles to the New Testament, this is very easy for you to go through Paul's letters, Ephesians, Corinthians, Galatians, Thessalonians, like this, Paul, Silas, and Timothy, to the church of the Thessalonians, in God the Father and the Lord Jesus Christ, grace and peace to you. All right, now, I'm going to throw you a little ringer. What church is this? Sorry, couldn't hear you. I'm not. Oh, like communion? Yes, I would say they're gonna have that fellowship. Good answer. Yeah. Churches in a certain region. This is a little different than Thessalonica, Ephesus, Corinth. It's a geographic area. How big is this area? Oh, maybe 70 miles. Judea, Galilee, Samaria, 70 miles top to bottom, maybe 30, 40 miles wide. Interesting. So it's not a local congregation, but it's a region where there are believers. What might we call this? You know, they're like, oh, this guy is so transparent. He's fishing for wells. He's fishing for district, circuit, synod. Yeah. But I like to just make the point, and I'm going to show you another reference from Revelation, that the Bible, the New Testament, very quickly views church beyond just one local congregation. And you know where this is going. I'm going to talk to you about your College of Ministry and the shared ministry we have as a national church body, yes. But interesting that already in Acts chapter 9, here's a reference to a regional church. Now, if you go to the book of Revelation, 7 churches are mentioned. And then in Revelation chapter 2 and 3, each church gets a letter. You've probably studied these in Bible class. And I'll give you a map to show you the 7 churches. Kind of going clockwise from noon, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea, Ephesus, Smyrna. And then you see on the map that island Patmos. That's where John is writing the book of Revelation. Now, each congregation got their own letter, and if you read the letters and study geography and history, there are often references from the local community, like, for example, put salve on your eyes. Then archaeologists will study that congregation, and they'll find out, oh, they had a salve business there, or you need living water, fresh water, or your water is neither hot nor cold. And then archaeologists dig into it. Oh, sure enough, there was a hot springs there or something. Yeah, I'm not being precise here. I'm just saying, using these as examples. And yet, even though each church gets their own letter, they're told to share their letter with the other congregations, and they're to be looking out for each other, encouraging each other. And that's what we see happening in other parts of the New Testament. This is a good example from 1 Corinthians 16. The churches in the province of Asia send you greetings. Aquila and Priscilla greet you warmly in the Lord, and so does the church that meets at their house. So what do these New Testament churches do for each other? This seems so simple. Well, they greet one another, but what meaning would that have for these early Christians? To just send greetings. Family, community. Someone else cares about us. Encouragement, excellent. Say it again. A common ministry, yep. All of these things, even in just a greeting, that you're aware of our circumstances. And really the classic description of being aware and helping each other is found in the book of Acts chapter 11. One of them, named Agabus, stood up and through the Spirit predicted that a severe famine would spread over the entire Roman world. This happened during the reign of Claudius. Remember, the Bible is always history woven into history. It's not a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away or something like that. You think of the account of Jesus' birth. You memorized it as a little kid in Sunday school or Lutheran elementary school, that he was born while Quirinius was governor of Syria. This taxation took place, and that's the New Testament, and it's a pretty awesome thing. So this famine, we know, did happen, and it's corroborated by other sources beyond the Bible. But the disciples, as each one was able, decided to provide help for the brothers and sisters living in Judea. The offering for the Christians in Judea or Jerusalem. Now, why did they need money during this famine? Well, you'd say, well, duh, Pastor. They needed money for food. But didn't everybody else need money for food? Why were those Christians in special need? Anybody study this? As Jewish Christians, they would have been ostracized from their Jewish community, right? So it's like the Amish. You leave the Amish and you're on your own, buddy. We're not going to help you out. So imagine, you used to have this Jewish boss, and in the neighborhood, there's your uncle who helped out with things. He's still Jewish, and you've become a follower of Christ. You've become a follower of Jesus. Don't help. I'm not going to help you. So famine, they've also been ostracized from their social network, and persecution. We know that that happened also to these Jewish Christians. And so the other Christians across the Mediterranean help out. Here's a reference in 2 Corinthians chapter 8. And we are sending along with him the brother who is praised by all the churches for his service to the gospel. What is more, he was chosen by the churches to accompany us as we carry the offering. And one final reference to that offering. Macedonia and Achaia were pleased to make a contribution for the poor among the Lord's people in Jerusalem. So again, everybody, the Romans knew about it, the Greeks or Corinth. It's news that spreads across the Roman Empire, and these Christians take offerings and they help their brothers and sisters in the faith. Now, before we transition to the work that we do together at Martin Luther College, I want you to think about reasons why churches band together. We talked a little bit about the greetings, and certainly we talked a little bit about the benevolent work to support each other. But what are some other things we do together as a fellowship of churches? Yeah. You can combine resources. I had an experience years ago. I was talking about the work of the synod, and someone said almost exactly what you said. And I had happened to look at the home missions or our mission team's report, and it talked about the expenses of starting a world mission, several $100,000 per year. And a home mission, a couple $100,000 per year. Anyway, I was doing a Bible class in a classroom at a Lutheran elementary school, and the treasurer of the church was like about where you are. He wasn't too far away, and he had shaken my hand, introduced himself, and he's got his donut and his coffee, and I said something like, well, could this congregation support a home mission or a world mission? I thought the treasurer was going to choke on his donut. He's like, no, we can't. I keep the checkbook. That would be a challenge for any congregation to plant a home mission or a world mission. Certainly daughtering of a congregation, that we often see happen. A congregation like Grace here, I mean, if you were in the right circumstances, say, I think we could daughter, or we could do a multi-site or something like that. But to do a plant somewhere, we really need to pool our resources for world and home missions. What are some other things we do together as a church body? Either as individually, but really together with other congregations, either circuit, district, or national. Yeah. Yeah. What an awesome thing. And I find the more that congregations look outside their walls, that's a test of faith, isn't it? When you have bills to pay and you wonder, well, what about our membership and all of that? But every time as I travel, and talk at Wells congregations, the more they do outside of their own walls, it seems just the more blessed they are with members and financial gifts. It's almost as if the Lord of the church just says, I'm gonna test you. I'm gonna see what you do with these resources. Are you gonna keep it all to yourselves, or are you gonna open your eyes at other opportunities for ministry? Excellent points. I did a senior vicar at Siloa, so we used to do the food serving and all of that. Yeah, good memories. Okay, I think we've talked about the work we do together. Let me jump in, give you an update on things at Martin Luther College. We do one thing at MLC. We train pastors, teachers, staff ministers. We train for ministry. As I travel, people will ask me, well, like if they see my Equipping Christian Witnesses pin in the airport or something like that, or, well, what do you do? Well, I'm a vice president at a college. Oh, tell me about it. And I can't tell you how often people are in total disbelief when I tell them that we do just one thing. We train for ministry. They'll ask, you mean you don't have nursing? Nope. You mean you don't have accounting? No. Well, you should start that. Those are really good. You should start a pharmacy program, because there's a lot of money in that. Nope, we don't do that. All we do is train pastors, teachers, and staff ministers. And this is our mission, to train a core of Christian witnesses to meet the ministry needs of Wells. For the most part, what are the ministry needs of Wells? Well, fill the pulpit. We need pastors, teachers, staff ministers. In recent years, the college, we've added urban ministry under Professor Ben Clemens. You may recognize that name. He used to be up at Mount Lebanon at the school up there. My Uncle Marvin served there for over 40 years, so there's always a special place in my heart for Mount Lebanon. But that was a need our church body presented to us. We have early childhood education, another need that our church body presented to us. And so we have everything from early childhood to training teachers that can do post or secondary education. So they could teach at Wisco or teach at Kettle Moraine or Lakeside Lutheran or some of our area Lutheran high schools. But that's it. That's all we do. And again, that means it's a challenge to sustain it. Frankly, a college of our size, to be viable without the support of our church body would be almost impossible in these days, because again, you need to offer majors and degrees that people want to pay for, and that are lucrative, you could say, if you want to stay in business. But this is all we do on behalf of Wells, to meet the ministry needs of Wells. Just one picture from campus, looking out from Old Main, looking at Chapel of the Christ. We are at 665 undergraduate students. That breaks down to 171 in the pre-seminary, and then the remainder, 449, that's staff ministry, education, some that are still undecided. Now, when you get a chance to look at the materials that I invite you to take with you for the campaign, you'll see in there a goal of 900 students, maybe even 1,000. We got a long way to go at 665. We were on a nice upward tick. We had gotten to 760, and now we've had a couple of years, 2 years of lower recruitment, and the pandemic has hit us pretty hard. We've had not nearly as many transfers in at semester, and more either leave of absence or transfers out. And on top of that, like a lot of colleges across the United States, recruitment for this coming semester, for this fall, is down 20%. So I agree. I see some people shaking their heads going, my, oh my. You said it. You said it. And yes, Pastor Hacker.
I would add, though, it's not impossible. I was there from 1997 to 2001, enrollment wasn't 1,000 all those years.
Yep.
And that comes with its own problems. I mean, as far
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. It presents a significant challenge, but we've been there before, as Pastor Hacker pointed out. Yes.
Throughout the whole history, I know that Northwestern combined with New Ulm, but if you put the two together, what would be the peak number over the?
So I would say what Pastor Hacker said, it was over 1,000, and that really was the peak right after amalgamation. So when Northwestern College closed, so that was 25 years ago. Yep, 1995. And well, 26 years ago. But 1995, when we combined the schools, we kind of had that peak in there. And I would say, yeah, as Pastor Hacker alluded to, it comes with challenges in a number of ways. Capacity, we'd like to build a new residence hall. It also presents a challenge finding that sweet spot for the number of calls available when students graduate. All it takes is a couple of years where not all of the teachers are assigned, and then you kind of get that, oh, well, I think I'll go into something else kind of thing. So, but the trends right now, if you look at the demographic of Wells teachers and pastors, it's not turning around anytime soon, because we have that baby boom bubble coming. A lot of the classes, so for example, my brother-in-law, Doug Lang, is trained as a pastor, but he teaches Bible history and Phi Ed and coaches track and some things at the college. His class had almost 70 men in it from the seminary. And now, this spring, I think they're calling for, what have you heard, 26 or 27, and that's kind of the trend line for the next couple of years. And so we don't anticipate the shortage turning around anytime soon. Tremendous vacancies, yes. We are at over 125 for pastors and a similar number for teachers. Principals, early childhood directors, all of those in super high demand right now. And so again, as those baby boomers nearing retirement, we anticipate the need will be there for indefinitely for our church body. I think a lot of people perhaps incorrectly thought, well, a lot of our schools are shrinking, people aren't having as many children, and all of those concerns are valid. But it's often very regional in the sense of, there are parts of our country where the schools are booming, and so, you just ask the Lord of the church to help us find that sweet spot for recruitment. But again, good discussion. Thank you. We serve annually over 1,000 other students in graduate studies and continuing ed. Graduate studies, they're pursuing their master's degree as a principal of a school or an early childhood director. And there's usually about 125 in that program. The rest of them are doing continuing education. I teach a class using preschools for outreach. I also have been asked to teach a class on just using evangelism at the local parish, like managing prospects and things like that. And so, there's always a dozen or so students from around the country. They're all in active ministry. So we serve, again, annually over 1,000 additional students on top of the undergraduates. This picture now is going to be 2 years old, but we had no picture of move-in because of COVID. So President Zarling still pokes out in the bottom left of the screen there. You can see him next. That's Morgan Chevy. So if you know Wayne Chevy from WLC, that's his daughter Morgan in the corner here. And President Zarling right behind her. President Gergel helped move in, the students move in, but again, with all the masks and social distancing, we didn't get a picture like that. Really, I put these hands up there to remind you of really the thing that we ask of every Wells member. If you would remember us in your prayers. Remember the need for called workers. Remember these professors up at this campus. Maybe sometimes it's out of sight, out of mind until we need a pastor or a teacher. The campaign, Equipping Christian Witnesses, has been extended through June 30th of next year, 2021. These are the three pillars. Again, you see the recruitment. Let's get to 900, maybe even 1,000 students. And when you're sitting at 665, it's a miracle. A miracle is what we're praying for. Now you can say, well, that's naive, Pastor Otterstetter. Well, we believe in miracles. We pray to the Lord of the church, and then we get active. We recruit and encourage. And let's see what the Lord of the church will do. We never said, from the beginning, we never thought that was going to happen in 1 year. President Zarling and I, when we were working on this campaign, set that goal out there as a potential 5-year goal. We thought, if we could add every year, another 10, 15, 20% to the enrollment, to the recruiting classes, we could grow it to that point. So again, the goal has always been longer than just an instant 1,000 students. The other part is financial aid. I'll talk a little bit more about CPGP, the Congregational Partner Grant Program. Your gift, your generous gift from Grace, will fund almost 2/3 of that for this coming school year. And then the facilities, the residence hall, $12 million. We were able to fund our athletic facility. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a moment. Again, I've talked about recruitment, and it's not just filling the pulpits and classrooms stateside, but we think across across the world, there's a need for gospel ministry and gospel servants. There was a request that came in, and this isn't the Grace Hmong outreach. This was a different request from Vietnam. There was a private school that wanted to have an English as a second language program and start this academy, and they approached our church body for 100 teachers. That would be our whole class this May, all of our teachers to go to a school in Vietnam. So again, we just shake our heads at that and go, wow, we can't possibly meet that. But the need, the demand for teachers, pastors, church workers isn't going away anytime soon. The Congregational Partner Grant Program, again, we were seeking between $3 and $5 million for that. Here's the reality for MLC the last 5 years. 75% of the graduates have carried debt, which is common across the United States. I have a daughter that graduated a year ago from Concordia Mequon in the pharmacy school. She is a pharmacist up in Ashland, Wisconsin, and is about to accept a manager's position already in Hayward, Wisconsin. That'll be good. Then I can ski the Berkey and have a place to stay. But so she has, you can imagine, over $100,000 in student loans. That's just part of the gig these days. My son works for PricewaterhouseCoopers as a cybersecurity guy, programmer guy, graduated from the University of Minnesota. Doesn't have nearly the debt his sister has, but has some. So some debt is just part of the equation. But we feel as a church body that this is we don't want to go any higher than this for our pastors, teachers, and staff ministers. So again, the Congregational Partner Grant Program, congregations across Wells, this year 600 congregations sent in $540,000 to be matched. And so we know that it's on over $1 million in financial aid, and we know it's already having an impact. We've had this program now, this is its 5th year, and we know it's having an impact on student debt. We've at least been able to hold the line. It's not been going up. Quick thank you from Jacob Price. Unfortunately, this young man is teacher track because he would be only the 2nd Northland Lutheran pastor in the history of the school. I'm the only one so far. I guess everybody said, well, if he's a pastor, we're not going to follow in his footsteps. But I go out, they drag me out every time there's some event at Northland Lutheran High School. I do the liturgy or I preach, and I'm still the only guy from this school. So anyway, we'll see. Jacob, where all the money's on Jacob graduating next year. He's a good basketball player too. Faith Adi Schultz, just got married. She's a wonderful young lady. She also was a participant in the Congregational Partner Grant Program, expressed the impact of that gift, of your gift on that program. I can't say it enough. Thank you. Here's just a rendering of a residence hall. This is under God's grace, what we'd like to construct. And people have asked me, well, you know, why do you need that if your enrollment, you know, you're not back up to 1,000 students? Some of this is a big part of recruitment because students today are expecting residence halls. I don't know if I have a better picture of, you know, some of the interior renderings, but the other style of residence hall where you share one bathroom instead of the communal bathrooms. Also, the 4 residence halls that we have on campus, the youngest one is 50 years old. And so like Centennial Hall, built as a thank you gift from the Wells in 1950, my mom is 84, and she stayed in that dorm as a student. So it tells you how, I mean, we've kept them up. They're clean. They're tuck-pointed, roofed. They're well-maintained. We're not embarrassed by them. But do you think that a young lady coming to stay in Centennial Hall 72 years after it was dedicated has a few more dresses and shoes than the ladies did in 1950? Yes. And they're expecting maybe a little bit different bathroom and just a little bit different residence hall. So again, I don't want to, we're not complaining, but I think everybody in Wells just simply needs to know that when it comes to recruitment, some of these things, it's not necessarily, you know, build it after we get the students, build it to get the students. Yes, Pastor Hacker. Yep.
That's one of the things that struck me when I was teaching is that how much more quickly other campuses like Gustavus or Northwestern St. Paul were already at that time advancing their campuses. We weren't at that time, so we're a little behind catching up.
Yep.
So just through the fierce competition there is for recruiting high school graduates, high school students all year.
Yep. And the thankfully, through a very generous gift from a family, we were able to fund this athletic facility, the Betty Cohn Fieldhouse, 36,000 square feet. It's got batting cages. It's got golf simulators, 4 more locker rooms. You know, these, again, we know that sports are expensive, but it's also a great recruiting tool. This is how you draw in young men and women for ministry. You know, they just, you don't, I think when you're an 18-year-old, do you really know, well, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a pastor. You know, I mean, some have that deep passion, God-given passion, but many of them just aren't sure. And so giving a campus like we are trying to improve, residence hall, athletic facility, all of these have an impact on recruitment. Okay, well, I'd like to wrap it up and have a closing prayer for, and you'll note in here, church is mentioned a number of times. We looked at church and ministry today. Any last minute questions? Yeah.
What is the average assistance or gift?
So the average, like a student pays, is that the cut to the, like the net cost? So.
What is given as a gift or tuition assistance from your program?
Sure. So room, board, and tuition is about $21,000, and we're not. A lot of schools do the high, you know, like the tuition is $40,000, and that's called high tuition, high aid. A lot of schools do that. We don't do that. It's more of the I don't know. It's just the different model of funding it. So subsidy by Wells pays for about 4,800 of that 21,000. So round it up to 5,000 from the gifts that Wells that you give both individually and as a church body. That's 37% of our budget. About 20%. I take that back. The subsidy is about 17%, and then the 20% is like through my office. So about 37% comes from WELS members, either through synod gifts or direct gifts to the college. And so the net cost then for the student is about $12,000. So that, you know, and so that too, when it comes to recruitment, is something you have to keep in mind. What's the net price? And most schools, if you were to go here in Milwaukee, MSOE or WLC, for example, you know, they have, theirs is the high tuition, high aid model. The net cost is about the same. And that's been one of these recruiting things that we used to be the better deal, and over the years now, it's about the same, the net cost that students pay. So we'd like to, again, that's why I want to increase financial aid. Okay. All right, let's close with the prayer then. If we could pray that together, a prayer for more Christian witnesses. Thank you. The church is yours, Lord Jesus, and all gospel servants are gifts of your grace. We thank you for them, and we ask you to please send more. Kindle a fire in the hearts of your people, a fire of humility and faith, of courage and compassion, that they might eagerly pursue full-time service to you and your church. Amen. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you again for the wonderful gift. Yeah, thank you. Good. Well, thank you. Hi. You bet.
I think one of our issues is a competitive nature between Malone and Wisconsin Lutheran College. I've been in teaching two of our area high schools over the years, taught in the early stages at Wisconsin Lutheran College, and there's been an undercurrent for years.
I think, I mean,
Very competitive. And I'll give you an example. I